Hey everyone, welcome back to Staying Connected, a podcast where I talk to other people about their stories with Vascular Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, or VEDS, which I also have. Today I have Morgan with me, who's going to share her son's story and her own experience with VEDS, and she's from Texas. Hey Morgan.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm really excited to have you share your story. I know we've talked about your story a little bit before, but I'm really excited for you to share it. So thank you for your willingness to do so.
Of course, I'm excited to share what we've been through.
So your son, Cameron, has VEDS.
Yes.
When did you find that out, and how old is he now?
He is 11 years old right now, and we got the diagnosis July 23rd of 2019, so it's only been a little over a year.
Wow. And what led to that?
Originally, so his dad, Mike, he passed away in 2001 from an aortic dissection, and he was 21 years old. And it was sudden. There was nothing leading up to it, anything like that. He just had pain in his chest, like late at night, and he went with a close friend to the emergency room. And he was complaining that he needed help. He needed somebody to, give him like medicine to make the pain go away, or what's going on. And they unfortunately did not believe that his pain was real. The vibe we kind of got was that they were thinking he just wanted pain meds. Like it was two 21-year-olds that came in the middle of the night, and they unfortunately discharged him. He went back to the house he was staying with his close friend at the time, and I believe he was in the shower, and he had sudden pain and fell, and we believe that's when the dissection happened. His friend called 911, and his friend's mom was there as well, and the ambulance took him to the hospital that he had actually just left within like an hour before, that he was just discharged from. So he went to the hospital and unfortunately did not make it. It was too late at that point because of the dissection. So we went to the hospital. We didn't know anything was wrong at the time. They were doing compressions on him to keep him alive. And I just remember that one of the doctors, she came into the room that me and his parents were in. She said, "I'm sorry, there's nothing else we can do." And my reaction, I guess I'm just this type of person, I started yelling at her. I know that's not the right thing to do, but I started yelling, he has a 2-year-old, how could you have to do something, you can't let him die. Like, I just started yelling. And everybody else in the room, his friend was there as well, and his friend's mom was just, they were kind of beside themselves. We waited for his sister to get there, and so that she could say goodbye too. And so he passed, and they did an autopsy. They did not genetically test him for anything, so he was never genetically tested. We don't have any confirmation of his testing, but at the time they put on his autopsy high blood pressure as like a partial cause of death, and then possible Marfan syndrome. So that was like our first inkling that there was anything connective tissue wise. So then after that, I was, at the time I was 19. So his dad was 21, just the people doing math. Yes, my son was 2.5. So we did have him when I was in high school. But that's okay. I just thought I'd get that out of the way. So within like a month of him passing, I made arrangements to get him to see a geneticist. And we went in to see geneticist and I believe cardiology when he was 2.5. And they looked him over. It was like 4 doctors. We were in there for an hour, just, everything about him and doing all the different tests that I think most people with VEDS have gone through. Like, are you bendy, and is your skin this, and does your chest cave in, all the things. And they said they didn't think he had anything, but they would test him for Marfan syndrome, which they did a blood test, and of course that came back negative. So after that, they told us, well, he probably doesn't have anything, and his dad probably died of something like a fluke thing, so just get him an echo and an EKG every year to make sure nothing's wrong, and he'll probably never need like any further assistance in his future. So that's what I did.
Wow. How many years did you do that?
I took him like religiously every single year to get his EKG and his echo. He was 2.5 when Mike passed, and it was until he was 9. And I guess I took him so religiously, like I never felt like we actually had an answer. I never felt like I knew why Mike died.
Right.
Like, it just didn't make sense. Yes, he was 21. He drank and he smoked cigarettes, and like most 21-year-olds, but it just didn't add up, like why we didn't really have an answer.
At what point did you start searching again for more answers, or become kind of dissatisfied enough to dig into it more?
So when he was at his 9-year echo and EKG, we were going in because he had to have we went in earlier in the year because he had to have a form filled out. He was going to do tackle football. And yes, everybody's going to cringe listening that somebody with VEDS was signed up for tackle football. He did do tackle football the year before, which he was never tackled for some odd reason. He played I think it's called like a cornerback. I don't know football, but he played something where you catch the ball, but he ended up never getting tackled the whole season.
Wow.
We just got super lucky is my only assumption on that. And so we went the following year, we had to get this done. We had to get the paper signed so that he could sign up. And the cardiologist was a new one just because of logistics. I had to take him to like a different location because of work and stuff. And that cardiologist, I said, so do you think he's good, for football? Do you believe he's good? She's like, well, I'll sign the form. I said, well, no. Do you think that he is like fit to play? Is there any worries that you have? And she said, well, I can tell you that the EKG and the echo show that he has normal, blood flow and everything's working. But I can't tell you that the tissue holding those things together is strong. And I was like, well, how do I find out whether they are? And she said, well, you need to go get more genetic testing done. And I was like, okay, well, can you put in a referral? And she said, yes. So she put in a referral, and I got a call from Texas Children's a couple weeks later, I think. And on the phone, they didn't have an appointment for I think it was 9 months.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. And while I was on the phone with her, she actually goes, oh, that's strange. We just had a cancellation. We have an appointment in 2 weeks. Would you like to take that? And I was like, yep, sign me up. So we went in and we saw another team of 4 doctors, and they looked him over, and they do all the things that they did kind of the first time that we went in. And all of them again said he doesn't look like he has anything, which was interesting. And they said, but we will do a full genetic panel of all connective tissue disorders. So I was like, okay. So he did the spit in the little tube, and they sent it off, and I believe it was 2 weeks I got a call on my way home from work. I had a long drive commute to where I live. And it was a geneticist that called me. And I remember she said, the test came back and he has something called vascular EDS. And I guess I was just naive in that moment. And to show how naive I was, my first question was, so can he play football? And she was like, no.
So how long after that did it take to get him into the doctor? And how did you react to that once you realized?
It was very quick. So on the phone call while I was driving home, she explained to me the very, very basics of vascular EDS. I mean, what you can cram into like a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And it really hit me like the severity. And it wasn't when I Googled it or, those things didn't help, of course. But it was when she said, we would like you to come in tomorrow at your leisure, and the doctor will clear any appointments out of the way when you have time to come in tomorrow. And it was very jarring to me because it's like 2 weeks prior, they hadn't had an appointment available for months. And now they're clearing the scheduling so that we can come in at our leisure. And I'm so thankful that they are that way. But at the same time, it was like, this is not good. So we went in the next day, and they're fantastic at Texas Children's. Can't say enough good things about them. They're helpful when you need them and everything. But we went in, they explained all of it to us, and they gave us all the information to get connected with people. So they actually gave us the information for the Marfan Foundation. Mm-hmm. They gave us the Facebook groups to join. They gave us another person in the VEDS community for me to reach out to start like asking questions, more than I have heard other people get, which is great. And it was really, really difficult at first. I found myself, like, I always say that I mourned it. I mourned the diagnosis. I found myself like in tears random times throughout the day for about a month, just trying to come to terms with, like, I don't know, the why is it us, or the how is this going to work, or I guess every question that everybody goes through.
Yeah. How did you cope with that?
I tried to first just make all the plans for the scans and everything. We got all the scans done within the first month, which was really, really good, just to get a baseline. Mm-hmm. And I just tried to focus on that. But I was kind of lost for a little while. I will say I probably talked my one of my work friends' ears off. I remember apologizing to her. We used to take walks back and forth in the morning while we had coffee, just to, talk for 10 minutes. And that was all I could talk about. I was researching, I was looking at things, and what's this? And, what doctors are doing research, and what's going to happen, and how do genes work? I said, I'm sorry, this is all I talk about. She's like, no, you need to talk about it.
That's awesome that you had a coworker that was able to do that for you.
Yes, I agree.
Because it does. I mean, that feeling kind of takes over no matter where you are, and you don't really get to stop working.
Yeah, you can't really stop your life because of the diagnosis, and it's very difficult. And I think the other thing that was difficult was that I had to tell Cameron what he had, because I had to tell him he was quitting football. Mm-hmm. I had to tell him what could happen to him, like in certain situations, like if you feel this pain, you need to tell me, or if this happens, you need to tell me, or you need to call 911. You need to wear this bracelet now that has emergency information. And he was very upset at first. in like the first couple days. He was almost kind of angry.
Mm-hmm.
He even told the doctors when they first asked him, when we went in the next day, they asked him, how are you dealing with it? And he said, I'm kind of mad. And they said, well, that's fair. But I wanted him to be aware, and he's probably one of the most knowledgeable about his disorder 11-year-olds in the VEDS community, which has its pros and cons. It's a good thing because he knows what to tell me when something's wrong, and he can be his own advocate, even at this young age. But it is difficult because he knows what happened to his dad. He knows what death means, which most children don't. And it does scare him.
How is he? I mean, he's not here to tell us himself, but, from a parent's perspective, how has he coped with that? Like, what does he do?
He did find a new sport, so he started doing golf, which was great. He really, really likes golf. So that was a big positive, and he's kind of good at it too. So he could win.
Always a plus.
Yeah. And I think he keeps a lot of it inside, but he does talk to me about it. He'll reach out just to me. He doesn't talk to anybody else about it. I've asked him if he wants to talk to a counselor or, anything. And he says, no, I just want to talk to you. And I think he still has a hard time with it. Like, I don't know if you ever really get over the diagnosis because you're living with it every day. But he'll say things that can be jarring to somebody. Like, a couple months ago, he said, we were talking about doing something in the future, and I was like, oh, well, we'll do that, in a couple years. Like, we're not going to do that right now. And he said, well, I want to do it now because I might not live as long as my other friends.
Oh.
And it was like, no, I always come back with it. You don't know what you're going to do. You don't know how long you're going to live. You can live to 100 years old. You don't know. You don't know what technology is going to do or any of it. And he's like, yeah, you're right. So he kind of is very matter of fact about it sometimes.
That has to be such a heartbreaking moment for a parent.
Yeah, it makes your heart kind of sink into your stomach when you first hear it. You're just like, no, don't. Like, I want to say, don't think that, but you can't say that because he's trying to deal with what it is.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that he can talk to you about it. I think that's a really important thing.
Yeah, I think that it's a positive that at least he can speak to me about it when he's worried or just, I don't know, wants to mention it. I know that at his school, he does not tell anybody. So the teachers know I've done the 504 and I've met with every single teacher every year and told them everything. I make the health alert sheet, everything we're supposed to do. But the kids, he doesn't like them knowing. Because last year in 5th grade, the kids started making fun of him or poking fun because he didn't have to do the things in gym class. He didn't have to do the push-ups or the sit-ups. And they said, oh, you're teacher's pet, you're a brown noser, you don't have to do it, all this stuff. And so we decided that we should tell the grade what he had so that they would stop. And we did that. And the, taunting did stop, but it developed a different problem because now he was that kid that, might die or, he became a different thing. Not that they were taunting him for it, but they were almost scared of him. So this year he went into middle school, a new school, new kids, and he didn't want anybody to really know.
Wow. What a kid.
Yeah.
That is tough. And like, what an adult decision to just kind of have to make for yourself at such a young age.
Yeah, he's very mature for his age, and he is a great kid. He does the right thing. He gets all A's. He he tries so hard in everything he does. And so I see that he's doing fine. Like in life in general, it's not affecting him to a point that it's interrupting his life. And that's the biggest positive for me, is that he's having a quality of life.
And I know that you also are doing some advocacy work now, right?
Yes, I definitely am.
So tell me how that started, how long after diagnosis it started, and really what inspired you and what you started doing.
So when he was having his scans, we had to be at the hospital for like a couple hours, because he also got, I signed him up to do the studies as well, for the couple different studies that they're doing for VEDS. Mm-hmm. So we were waiting in the eatery area in the hospital and having lunch. And I was on my computer because I wanted to make a shirt for a race that I was going to do. I had run one marathon or two marathons prior. And so I was a runner, and I was like, well, what if I made a shirt for VEDS, for the running? And it doesn't have to be elaborate or anything. It just started off with this very, very simple idea. And I was like, well, what would the shirt even say? And I'm like, marathons are kind of hard, but VEDS is harder. So I was like, well, if only life with vascular EDS was as easy as running a marathon. And I think most people with VEDS would attest that they would much rather run a marathon one time than, live with VEDS.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
I would just like to say absolutely.
Yeah, you train, you be ready. So I decided to make the shirt, and I was like, well, what if a couple people wanted to buy them, and I could donate the money to, help with, research or supporting the VEDS community. So I was like, okay, well, I'll do that. And it kind of went further because people bought them, and people then donated, besides buying the shirt, they donated to it. And I ended up raising, with my company's match, $5,300.
Wow.
In just the first couple months. And then I ran the marathon, and then I ran a half marathon in the shirts. And so that was the running part that I will continue to do in the future. I have a couple more races coming up in January, February, and March. I've got, I believe, 4 races in total lined up.
Wow.
So that'll be fun.
That's awesome.
I would have done more throughout, but COVID, so
yeah,
kind of disrupted things.
Yeah.
And then around January, right after I had run the race, I started trying to think of what could I do on top of that. I wanted to do more, and I thought at the time, well, what a lot of people complain about is in the VEDS community is that when you have an emergency, nobody knows what it is. Whether or not you have the diagnosis, no one knows what you mean when you say you have vascular EDS. So I just thought, well, if I could go and tell people what it is and how to handle it in emergency situations, to EMT, first responders, paramedics, then at least the first 20 minutes of that emergency would be handled correctly. And it would give the person that's in that predicament that may be unconscious or not able to say what's wrong with them, the ability to have the first responder be their advocate when they go into the hospital and they hand them over. Because my fiance is a first responder, and he has told me that when you put the person over to the hospital, you explain what happened. So if that first responder could say, they have something called vascular EDS, they need this, they cannot have that, and you need to basically believe them, it would be a huge help. So I created like a little training program that it was a 15-minute discussion that I gave, or presentation, I should say, and I made a handout to give to each of them. And I know that most of them will have heard me and may forget half of what I said, but at least they've heard of it. So I ended up, so far I've trained 35 first responders, and my plan was to train more, and I hope to in the future. But when I did that, it was the week before COVID became huge.
Yeah.
So I didn't go any further with it at the time.
It's still really, really great. Like, honestly, your words there ring so true to me. Like, I always feel like the first responders can be your best advocates in an emergency.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that's so great what you've done, and what I know you will continue to do when it's safe and smart to do so. It's awesome.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And I, in the summer, my company, they gave an opportunity for people to do nominations for a Community Spirit Award. And we have, just in our part of the company, about 20,000 employees. And so they chose out of the nominations that came in, and I ended up so excited, won the award, and I was able to give $7,500 to the VEDS movement.
That is so awesome. I mean, I already knew this piece of information, but I want to say how grateful I am, not only for the donation to the VEDS movement, but also like 20,000 employees or coworkers saw information about VEDS, right? Yeah.
They had me do a video about what I had done during the year, and about the condition. And the video was sent throughout the company to all employees worldwide, and as well as the VEDS movement website, so that they could go in and research more. And I actually, since it came out about a month ago, I've gotten many emails from people saying that they had never heard of it, and they went to the website and researched it, and how awful, and they were very kind words and all, but it did show that people went to learn more.
Wow.
Just the people that emailed me that felt comfortable enough to reach out to me and tell me they did, there's another group that didn't reach out but still did the research.
Mm-hmm. That is really incredible, Morgan. Like, all of this has really been in, you said it was July last year that he was diagnosed?
Yeah, July 23rd.
So you've been booking it, getting this stuff accomplished, and I really think, you really deserve a round of applause, because it takes a lot to get through this diagnosis in itself. I can't speak to how it feels for a parent, but I've heard from other parents and know myself personally what the diagnosis feels like. And you have really just done amazing things in a short period of time with that.
Thank you. That means a lot to have you think it's great, because you do run the VEDS movement.
I do, but it's full disclosure.
I have admired even this podcast. I found it the first day when we found out. They actually gave me the podcast name in the paperwork.
Oh, wow.
The day that we found out. And they, one of the doctors that many people know said that she listens to it when she goes through her paperwork, and she finds it very interesting, and she thought that I should look into it. I was like, I will. So listen to many, many episodes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It really means a lot too.
And I think the whole thing of, like you said, I started booking it, or I started doing a lot all at once. I think I'm just the type of personality that I've always been a very determined person. And that's the nice word. Some situations the word people would use is stubborn or hard-headed. But I'll go with the nice one. And I've just been the type that I can't sit back idly and not do anything. I can't do, I'm not a doctor. I don't have a medical background. I can't do it all, but I joined the VEDS movement committee to put the event on, and I can run, and I can go talk to first responders in the Houston area where people are coming from all over to have scans done and to have surgeries and to, have procedures here that have VEDS. Mm-hmm. And to just give people a fighting chance, it means a lot to me. And I'd say, in the end, it is for Cameron, of course. I want to know that I did everything that I could within my power to help him. And if it wasn't enough, at least I know I tried. At a certain point, you get very blunt in your thinking, and I think a lot of people probably do, and they don't say it out loud, but to say it out loud, I'm going to do whatever I can to save my son's life. And if that means I need to run 5 marathons, then I'm going to do it. And if that means I need to join committees and help people and talk to people and put myself out there, even when it's uncomfortable, I'm going to do it. And I think most parents would for their kids.
That's really well-spoken, amazing work that you're doing.
Thank you.
It's interesting because, everybody copes with something in a different way. And like you said, you can't sit and do nothing. And obviously you're a marathon runner, so
yeah,
even sitting down might be.
Not everybody should just start running those. Do not advise it.
But what a great way to take something that you're already doing and expand it into something more.
Yeah.
I just think it's really wonderful. And I really appreciate everything you've done in the short period of time for the community.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anything this is the final question. Is there anything that you would tell somebody who is a newly diagnosed parent of a child, who's just found out their child has this? Is there anything you'd want them to know that you've learned over the last year?
I'd say don't be too hard on yourself at first, because you almost expect yourself to, you got to get on with life, you got to get over it. Or I found myself being really hard, just trying to rush that mourning process. Don't rush it. You need to deal with the emotions that come with this. And if that takes a year, then that takes a year. And if that takes longer or shorter, then that takes longer or shorter. And you need to handle it the way you handle it, because everybody mourns differently. So I've heard a lot of people use the word give yourself grace. I think that's a great way to explain it. And also listen to what your child has to say. For a long time, I didn't believe that before the VEDS diagnosis, I didn't believe some of the pains he was having were any different than any other kid, because I didn't have other kids. But he has osteoarthritis in all of his joints. He has subluxations happen. He now goes to physical therapy. So it's hard sometimes to get out of your own head in the diagnosis, but it does help to talk to your child, if they're old enough, about what they're feeling and how they're handling it. And if you feel the urge to do something, reach out. I mean, there's a lot of us out here in the community that want to help, and we would definitely find something for you to help with. Don't worry, there's not a short order on that. And get involved in the community. I got involved in the Facebook groups within a couple days of the diagnosis, and it's very hard at first because it's very real. People are posting things that are happening to them because they are happening, and they're looking for help and support. So, take a moment to take that in, that it's going to be a bit of a shock, and then you can rely on the community. Something that I really believe with this VEDS community is that it is very strong, and these people really do fight for each other. There are people across the United States that somebody's posting on there, or across the world even, I'm having this pain, or I'm doing this, and someone will post back, a comment, go to a hospital, here's this person's number, what do you need me to help you with, praying for you. There's just immediate assistance, and it's the entire vibe of the community is that people genuinely care. They genuinely care about each other, making it through this, and it's become such a big family unit, in a sense. So I would go into the community with open arms and try to embrace that.
Yeah. And if you need help finding that community, feel free to reach out to me on this podcast or go to thevedsmovement.org. You'll find a help and resource center there where you can reach out and we can get you connected. So,
yes.
Thank you so much again, Morgan, for sharing your experience and Cameron's and Mike's.
Of course. I'm very happy that I got to share with everybody, and I hope it helps somebody.
I know it will. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This was Katie, your host, and there will be new episodes on the last Sunday of every month, so stay tuned and have a great day. We'll see you soon.